For over a decade, beat-em-up games dominated the gaming scene. Players stepped into the shoes of street warriors, vigilantes, and lone fighters, taking on waves of enemies with relentless fury. From the neon-lit streets of Double Dragon to the chaotic brawls of Final Fight and the hard-hitting combat of Streets of Rage, the genre was on fire. Arcades and consoles alike were filled with fast fists, brutal combos, and unforgettable showdowns. But by the early 2000s, the genre faced an uphill battle. The golden era of beat-em-ups was fading. Gamers were looking for more depth, and with the rise of 3D graphics, developers saw an opportunity, an opening to evolve the genre beyond its arcade roots. And that's when Capcom stepped in. They wanted to take the beat-em-up genre to the next level, blending intense street combat with RPG mechanics, branching choices, and an unforgiving world of crime and betrayal. Enter Beatdown Fists of Vengeance, a brutal, open-ended brawler that set out to transform the genre. This is the story of how this game was made. Deep within the crowded city of Tokyo, a small studio was formed in the year 2000, Cavia. The name stood for Computer Amusement Visualizer. Their early years were spent in the shadows, working under contract to develop licensed anime tie-ins like Ghost in the Shell and Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles. They even lent a hand to Capcom on Resident Evil Dead Aim and dabbled in cinematic storytelling with the now forgotten Glass Rose. For the most part, Cavia was an unknown name, just another studio in the industry quietly producing games that rarely left a lasting impact. But then came Drakengard and Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles, two titles that, while not groundbreaking, managed to gain enough attention to put Cavia on the radar. However, these successes weren't enough to turn the studio into a major player, but they gave them something invaluable: momentum. With that momentum came a desire to try something different, a chance to step outside the realm of contract work and create something more their own. With Glass Rose completed and behind them, Cavia found itself at a turning point. They had spent years working on contract projects, but now, someone within the studio whose identity remains a mystery suggested something different. Instead of waiting for the opportunity, why not create it? What started as a simple idea soon turned into hours of brainstorming. Concepts were thrown around, ideas clashed, and one vision slowly took shape. An action game, a brawler, unlike anything they had done before. With a concept in hand, Cavia reached out to Capcom, specifically Tatsuya Minami, the head of production studio Production 1 at the time. And with that meeting, a new project was born. This was the beginning of Beatdown, Fists of Vengeance. From the very start, Cavia set out to bring fresh ideas to the beat-em-up genre. To achieve this, the team took inspiration from crime and mafia films as well as video games that captured the grit and chaos of street warfare. At the time, Tatsuya Minami, head of Capcom Studio Production 1, mentioned in an interview with IGN and GameSpot that crime films were a key influence. However, he never revealed which films or games specifically inspired Beatdown Fists of Vengeance. After some extensive digging, I came across a Japanese article that mentioned one particular film, The Warriors, a film and later a game that revolved around gang warfare and brotherhood. One of Beatdown's key mechanics, the ability to recruit allies, bears a striking resemblance to the Warriors. But Cavia and Capcom weren't content with just another brawler. They wanted Beatdown to stand apart. To do that, they introduced free roaming, one-on-one hand-to-hand combat segments reminiscent of Final Fight Streetwise, and an RPG-like customization system where players could change their character's appearance right down to their facial features. They even added a wanted system likely taking cues from Grand Theft Auto. From the outset, Beatdown was designed with one goal in mind: to appeal to the American market. The game was heavily influenced by American crime films, so it was clear that the game was not targeting the Japanese audience, but rather the other way around. On paper, Beatdown Fists of Vengeance seemed like a game that could redefine the genre. A fusion of RPG mechanics and beat-em-up action, a gritty, violent brawler set in a world of crime and betrayal, it all sounded promising, but that was just on paper.
Capcom.
After roughly 2 years in development, Beatdown Fists of Vengeance was finally unveiled in February 2005 at the Capcom press conference in Las Vegas. It was introduced alongside an impressive lineup featuring Devil Kings, Okami, Darkstalkers, Final Fight Streetwise, Without Warning, Onimusha Dawn of Dreams, and many more games. A trailer and a few screenshots were shown alongside the premise, gameplay features, and what Beatdown was going to be about. It wasn't until E3 2005 that the public finally got their first real glimpse of Capcom's latest beat-em-up. Capcom had a long-standing reputation for delivering some of the best brawlers of the PS2 era, and with Beatdown, expectations were high. Early impressions were promising, and for journalists who played it at E3, there was hope that this could be a standout entry in the genre. But despite its potential, Beatdown faced an uphill battle. Capcom and Cavia had designed the game with the American market in mind, yet the marketing strategy was weak. The game barely made a splash on major US gaming sites or magazines, and outside of a few previews and 2 interviews, interest was very low. No TV commercials, no high-profile marketing campaigns, no hype. Ironically, while Beatdown Fists of Vengeance was developed with the American market in mind, it received more coverage in European and Japanese magazines than in the US, the very audience it was meant to target. Following its E3 2005 showing, Beatdown made its way to the Tokyo Game Show. This was the public's second chance to experience the game, just a month after the game's North American release. However, footage from the event showed something unexpected. The Japanese audience was far more excited for Beatdown than both American and European players combined. It seemed like Beatdown had already secured a fanbase, or did it? Unlike the West, where Beatdown was practically invisible, Japan saw a modest but genuine marketing push. Capcom aired 3 TV commercials, print ads flooded gaming magazines like Famitsu, and flyers promoted the game in various places. There was even a collaboration with a DJ group to perform the game's Japanese opening theme. But the biggest surprise? Beatdown had its own official manga illustrated by Yanouchi Daijo, the creator of Gang King. The manga expanded on the game's story, offering additional context to the characters and events. However, there was a hurdle. The manga was only available through a limited lottery with just 50 copies ever produced. Attempts to find or purchase the manga have been met with failure. Japanese sellers simply aren't willing to part with it. At this point, it's likely lost to time. The promotions didn't stop there. Capcom even released a set of exclusive Beatdown themed t-shirts for Christmas, each one representing a different character from the game. Japan did justice to Beatdown, but in America, there was hardly any effort at all. After development on the game reached its conclusion, Beatdown Fists of Vengeance finally hit the shelves in August 2005 for the PS2 and Xbox in America, followed by a September launch in Europe and a November release in Japan. But how did the game that sought to revolutionize the genre fare? How did the game that was specifically tailored for American and European audiences perform? Horribly. Both commercially and critically, Beatdown was dead on arrival. Major outlets like Eurogamer, Electronic Gaming Monthly, Edge, and IGN savaged the game with low scores, criticizing its clunky mechanics, uninspired design, and lackluster execution. What was meant to be a bold step forward was instead dragged through the mud, dismissed as yet another forgettable entry in a genre struggling to evolve. And commercially, even worse. In the UK, the game failed spectacularly, selling less than 2,000 copies before disappearing without a trace, buried beneath the weight of high-profile releases. In the US, Beatdown fared no better. 2005 was a brutal year for the beat-em-up genre, especially for new IPs. Beatdown Fists of Vengeance was yet another casualty of a market that had already moved on. In contrast to its Western reception, Beatdown Fists of Vengeance found a more appreciative audience in Japan. The esteemed Japanese publication Famitsu awarded the game a score of 30 out of 40, commending its atmospheric depth, engaging mechanics, and a narrative that paid homage to its roots. The game maintained steady sales for 7 consecutive weeks, even surpassing titles like Shadow Hearts from the New World in the rankings. It appears that Japan was the sole region where Beatdown found both commercial success and critical acclaim. What happened after Beatdown's commercial and critical implosion in the West? All hopes for a sequel were buried. While Beatdown may have been a colossal failure, it didn't severely affect Capcom. Capcom had merely served as the distributor and consultant. The real blow landed on Cavia. The rights to Beatdown remained with Cavia for years, but with its reputation in theaters, there was never a serious push to revive the IP, and with their shutdown in 2010, all hopes for a Beatdown revival were squashed. Looking back, Beatdown has been all but forgotten. Its developers moved on, some finding their way into more ambitious and successful projects, while others left the industry entirely. Even Capcom pretends they've never worked on this game because in truth, they never truly owned it to begin with. And what of the players? Even those who stumble upon Beatdown years later today rarely show it the same reverence that Japanese fans once did, because in the end, what Beatdown set out to accomplish, the blend of open-world crime, drama, and brutal street brawling, was perfected elsewhere. Ryuga Gotoku, better known as Yakuza, launched on the PS2 that very same year. It delivered almost everything that Beatdown had aspired to be, and more. The Yakuza series flourished, becoming a multi-million selling franchise with global acclaim, while Beatdown faded into the void. Beatdown is forgotten, but at least we still remember it. For now, but for how long?